Welcome back to Inhibition. Today's topic, Kyle Rittenhouse. What are the myths about the shooting, from guns to state lines to his intent? It's time we talk about it.
So it's an illegal weapon because of his age. He's only 17, was not allowed to have it till he was 18, I believe. So illegally possessing the firearm. That's definitely something he's going to get popped with.
Now, he says that's something he's definitely going to get popped with. That's not true. First of all, that's not a definite. He's acting like it's a definite. Clearly, this guy has not done any research or looked at the law or listened to legal experts. There are tons of legal experts who have come out and said there's no way Kyle could be found guilty of this, even if there was an argument to be made that, this law was written only, or this exception was written only for people who were going hunting. It was to give an exception for teenagers to go hunting, and Kyle wasn't hunting, so therefore he doesn't qualify. That's not how the wording is written in the statute, and therefore there is a legal rule called the rule of lenity that rules in favor of the defendant anytime the law itself is not written clearly. And therefore this would likely, even if there was an argument to be made that it was for the intention of hunting, still be ruled in Kyle's favor. So no, not there underage with a rifle. He was legally allowed to have that.
Crossing state lines. You didn't live there. You didn't live in the city. You didn't even live in the state.
Now, this is a big one that people talk about all the time. Crossing state lines. He wasn't from Kenosha. He was from a completely different state. And they act like this is some kind of gotcha. Oh, he crossed state lines. It's completely irrelevant. And I'll explain why here in just a moment. But you don't lose your right to self-defense because you cross state lines. So unless they had any type of evidence that he crossed state lines for the intent of going there to murder people, crossing state lines is not illegal. It's not a crime at all. And he's legally allowed to do it. And there's nothing stopping him from doing it. And it doesn't take away his right to self-defense. So it's completely irrelevant. But more specifically, just to point out, not only is it irrelevant, but it's not even a big deal. You can see here, Kyle lives in Antioch, Illinois, and he went to Kenosha. That is a 33-minute drive. 33 minutes. He actually lived within walking distance of the Wisconsin state border. So even though he was from Illinois, he drove 30 minutes. That's not like, when the people act like he's not from there, he's from a completely different state. There's even been people saying online that he crossed 2 state lines, like he went 2 states over. I don't know where people get this stuff. That's not true. He drove 30 minutes to get to Kenosha, and that's actually less distance than many of the protesters, including one of the protesters Kyle shot, drove to get there. So he drove less distance. That's number one. Number two, that's less than a lot of people's daily commute to work. And people cross state lines to go to work. As a matter of fact, that's exactly why Kyle crossed state lines. Rittenhouse did a interview with the Washington Post and told the Post he went to Kenosha on August 24th, which was the day before, for his job as a lifeguard. He told the Post he got off work at 8 p.m. and went to Black's stepfather's house, where he, one of his sisters, and Black spent the evening watching live streams of chaos erupting downtown, his sister told the Post. Rittenhouse did work in Kenosha County, working part-time as a lifeguard at the Pleasant Prairie Recplex. According to a spokesman for the village-owned center, he had been employed for just about 20 days before August 26th. So he absolutely did work in Kenosha County. Now, Pleasant Prairie is it's like a suburb of Kenosha. It's the next little town over, and it's all in the same county, and it's only a few minutes from downtown Kenosha. So he absolutely did work in Kenosha. That's actually why he crossed state lines. He didn't cross state lines to go to the protest. As a matter of fact, the first night of rioting, Jacob Blake was killed on August 23rd. August 24th was the first night of rioting, and Kyle actually went to Kenosha before that riot broke out to go to work. So when he drove across state lines, a protest hadn't even broken out yet, let alone for him to decide to go there. And then from there, that night is when the protests broke out, and he was at Black's stepfather's house. That's where he spent the night. And they sat there and watched live streams of what was happening downtown. After he woke up the next day, they went and cleaned some graffiti, and it was only then that they decided to go to the protest, which was in Kenosha, in the same area he was already in, just a few minutes away. So, no, he did not cross state lines to go to the protest.
So why do you feel the need to go over there and protect it? That's not your personal property. So the castle doctrine, which is a typical self-defense doctrine, you have the right to defend your home, your castle, that cannot apply in this situation. So there goes about half of your self-defense claims in the country. Because you can't claim castle doctrine because you cross state lines to go there.
This is another one of those moments where I had to listen to this clip a second time after I first heard it to just make sure I heard him correctly. The castle doctrine has nothing to do with Kyle's case, and his statement of even bringing this up makes no sense. So first of all, what is the castle doctrine? So the castle doctrine is an exception to a rule in place in some jurisdictions that requires a defendant to retreat before using deadly force in self-defense. The castle exception states that if a defendant is in his home, sometimes his vehicle, he's not required to retreat prior to using deadly force in self-defense. Now, some castle doctrines, there's a limited version of the castle doctrine, and then there's the full castle doctrine, and it depends on where you are as to which version of the castle doctrine you have. Some of them argue that even you don't have a duty to retreat. However, if someone breaks in your house, there has to be evidence of that imminent death or great bodily harm before you are able to use lethal force. And so that's the limited castle doctrine. And then there's also the true castle doctrine, which is not only do you not have an exception to retreat, or you don't have a duty to retreat, but there is an assumption or a presumption of harm by the very nature of someone coming into your home unauthorized. If someone breaks into your home, even if they didn't intend to actually physically harm you, you are allowed to presume that if they are coming into your home unauthorized, then they are there to harm you, and you are justified in using lethal force. Both versions of the castle doctrine do have to do with your home or your vehicle, and not out and about in public. And that's fine. That has nothing to do with this. His statement here about eliminating half of self-defense claims, I don't even know what that statement means, what he's trying to say there. It's not like you have two options, castle doctrine and some other option for self-defense, and if you get rid of castle doctrine, that's half your ability to claim self-defense. No, self-defense doesn't just apply in your home. The castle doctrine is just a specific type of doctrine related to self-defense, eliminating the duty to retreat in your home. It has nothing to do with the Kyle Rittenhouse case at all, and the fact that he even brings this up makes no logical sense. Castle doctrine is just a type of self-defense doctrine that allows you to defend yourself in home, and sometimes your vehicle, without retreating, and in many cases with the presumption of harm if someone enters your home unauthorized. This does not mean self-defense is not applicable elsewhere, and has absolutely nothing to do with Kyle's case. On top of this, people have tried to argue, stand your ground. Wisconsin's not a stand your ground state. That doesn't mean that Wisconsin doesn't allow the right to self-defense. Stand your ground just means that you can act in self-defense without retreating first. If you have the ability to retreat, you don't have to withstand your ground. But that doesn't mean that you don't have a right to self-defense in a non-stand your ground state. It just means that if you can retreat, you should. And guess what? Kyle did. He ran away from every single person that he shot. So he did attempt to retreat. They chased him down. Castle doctrine, stand your ground, has nothing to do with any of it. Kyle still acted in self-defense. And this is a completely irrelevant point, clearly spoken by someone who doesn't understand self-defense laws, and they're just using catchphrases. Castle doctrine, stand your ground. These catchphrases people have heard in the media or people have heard in their echo chambers thrown around, and they think it's a good argument, when in reality, it's just revealing they have no idea what they're talking about.
And that also makes us have to look at intent. You traveled across state lines with an illegally obtained weapon.
Kyle did not cross state lines with a gun. We've already established that by looking at the facts and evidence. So he says that Kyle crossed state lines with a gun, and that means we need to look at intent, because that must mean negative intent if he crossed state lines with a gun, which he didn't even do. But intent can't be assumed, it must be demonstrated. What he's doing here is he's trying to say that because Kyle crossed state lines with a gun, which he didn't do, by the way, but even if you assume he did, he's assuming that because he crossed state lines with a gun, that must mean negative intent. That's not necessarily true. What if he crossed state lines with a gun because he was planning on going hunting? What if he crossed state lines with a gun, which again, he didn't do? But what if he crossed state lines with a gun, even if for the purpose of going to the protest, but he only had the gun for self-defense purposes because he knew it could be dangerous? What if he crossed state lines? I mean, there's a million reasons he could have crossed state lines with a gun if he had done that. So you can't just assume intent. You can't just say, well, I think his intent must be bad, therefore my assumption equals reality. You actually have to demonstrate that intent with evidence.
So what was your intent? If you travel across state lines with an illegal weapon because you're mad at the people there?
Mad at the people there? He just made that up. There is no evidence that Kyle was mad at the people there, that he crossed state lines with a gun, which he didn't do, because he was mad at people there. That's just completely made up. As a matter of fact, the evidence explicitly shows the opposite. Here's Kyle talking about helping injured people there, which is something that someone who's mad at the people there wouldn't do. But here he is talking about it and explaining that the gun was only for self-defense.
What are you doing out here? Obviously you're armed and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night, so what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. I also have my med kit.
Clearly, he had his medical kit, people were getting injured, he was there to take care of injured people. Nothing about that indicates he's mad at the people there. As a matter of fact, we can go further. He's implying that he was mad at the people there, probably because he already pointed out they were Black Lives Matter protesters. He's trying, and we're not going to get too detailed in this because he doesn't go too much into it in the video, but a lot of people will say he's mad at people there because he hated black people or he hated Black Lives Matter, or whatever. His sister was a Black Lives Matter protester. A lot of people don't know that. There's a New Yorker article. The article definitely tries to paint Kyle out as being in the wrong, but it does give some details, and one of the details is the fact that his sister had been to a protest that him and his sister both believed Chauvin was guilty of murder. That, I mean, he wasn't against the Black Lives Matter protests at all. Now, he was against rioting, but he wasn't against the Black Lives Matter protests. He wasn't some racist bigot who was mad at black people or Black Lives Matter protesters. That's just not true, and this is just assumed intent with no evidence to back it up. If you go to court and just say he had intent and they ask for evidence and you say, well, he crossed state lines with a gun, what else would he be doing? You're not going to get anywhere. That's not how intent works. You actually have to demonstrate intent with evidence.
The intent is pretty obvious, and I think the prosecution is going to have a very easy time proving that intent.
So he says the intent is obvious and the prosecution can prove it. First of all, intent can't just be obvious. You can't just say something's obvious and therefore it proves intent. Something being obvious to one person may not be obvious to someone else because you may be looking at it through a bias. You actually have to have evidence to prove intent. And here's the thing. Even the prosecution, supposedly who's going to prove intent of him traveling to Kenosha was to cause harm, the prosecution doesn't even make that case in the charges. His first count was for first-degree reckless homicide, not first-degree intentional homicide. This was for his shooting of Rosenbaum. This was the first shooting. So if Kyle was there to shoot and intentionally harm people, he had intent to harm people, the very first person he shot, they say wasn't intentional. It was reckless homicide is what they labeled it as. Then they have a second count of first degree recklessly endangering safety of using a dangerous weapon. That was for Richard McGinnis, who was the witness who was standing by close to Rosenbaum and Kyle when the incident happened. Then count 3. This is where intent comes in. Count 3 is first degree intentional homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon. This was for the killing of Huber. Notice they didn't say that it started with intent. Initially, they claimed he was just reckless, but then they claim it became intentional with the second and third shooting, which would indicate that it didn't start with intent, which means he didn't go there with that intent. He gained that intent after killing the first person. And so even the prosecution disagrees with this person's claim. The count 4 was attempted first degree intentional homicide with Gage. Now, I can tell you right now, all of these, he's not guilty of. It's clear self-defense. There's some obvious reasons. I'll probably do another video breaking down all of his charges specifically and going through what the law, the requirements to prove that he's guilty of these would be. So I'll be looking for that video. That'll come in the future. But yeah, even the prosecution, who supposedly this person claims is going to prove his intent of going to the protest was to kill people, doesn't even make that argument in their charges. So where there's a mens rea is just a word that it actually means guilty mind, but it's the idea of proving intent. Where there's a mens rea requirement or intent requirement, the law requires that a jury be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt of intent. In order to prove intent, the jury has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. Is there enough here to beyond a reasonable doubt show intent? Because all this person is saying is that it's obvious based on assumptions. But is there anything that could produce reasonable doubt? What about the fact that he was running away? If he had intent to shoot and harm the people that he shot, why did he attempt to run away from them and not just open fire to begin with? Or what about the fact that Gage, who he was, who he shot in the arm and injured but didn't kill, why didn't he shoot Gage again to kill him? Gage, he was right there, Gage, he shot Gage. If he had intent to kill, why didn't he pull the trigger again and shoot him until he died? He didn't. He just shot him in the arm, and even after only injuring him, he didn't shoot again. What about the fact that he took a medical kit and was offering medical assistance even to protesters on video? That doesn't show intent to want to kill protesters. Or what about the fact that he didn't shoot other people? There was someone who pepper sprayed him earlier in the night and he didn't shoot them. Or what about the fact that when he was on the ground, people had been running up to him. He shot Huber, he shot Gage, but other people had their hands in the air, like they approached him, but then they put their hands in the air and backed away, and he didn't shoot them. Why not, if he was there to kill them? These things actually clearly produce reasonable doubt of an intent to murder, and therefore it doesn't show that the jury can be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that the intent isn't so obvious as this person claims it is.
Now, as far as the legality of all this goes, Republicans keep saying, no, it's self-defense. If you watch the video, people were shooting at him. I've seen the videos. I haven't seen that in any of them. I mean, I'm sure there's some highly edited ones out there where Republicans have, put stuff in, maybe. I don't know. But I've seen plenty of videos on this, and I don't see other people shooting guns at Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't. Especially not the people he murdered. So that's going to be difficult to prove. Maybe it's there. Maybe I just haven't seen it.
Now, there's a couple of problems with this. First of all, this is a straw man argument, and I'll explain why in just a moment. About other people shooting at him. He's building a straw man and then knocking it down. But I want to point out that I think it's funny. He starts talking about Republicans, and again, we've already proven it's not just Republicans that support Kyle. But he is trying to make a political point. This is all about politics for him. This isn't about evidence or facts or reality. This isn't about lives that were taken. This isn't about what's right and what's wrong. This is about Democrats versus Republicans. This is about I hate my political opponents and want to find a way to attack them. Even going so far as to say that Republicans have created fake videos that have added stuff into the videos. I'm assuming like adding gunshot sounds or stuff that, you know, conspiracy theory level stuff. He's saying that literally conspiracy theories about altered videos with no evidence, just so he can attack Republicans. Just be careful. I mean, I want you to see what's happening. This is all politics, so just keep that in mind. But first, let's talk about the fact this is a strawman argument. He's not arguing against the actual argument. The argument is not that he was justified in shooting Rosenbaum, Huber, and Gage because they were shooting at him, and that makes it self-defense. That's not the argument. No, that's the argument he's trying to knock down. He's trying to say, okay, it was justified. You know, Republicans say it was self-defense because they were shooting at him, and so he shot back. No. The argument isn't that. Rosenbaum did not shoot at him. Nobody has claimed Rosenbaum, Huber, or Gage shot at him. The argument is that Rosenbaum threatened to kill Kyle, charged at him unprovoked, chased him down, and tried to steal his gun, which would imply he wanted to use it on Kyle, giving Kyle the right to act in self-defense. The argument is that Huber hit Kyle over the head with a skateboard twice, attempted, which is deadly force in and of itself, and then attempted to steal Kyle's gun unprovoked, giving Kyle the right to act in self-defense. And then Gage pointed a pistol at Kyle and charged him, which again is a deadly threat, giving Kyle the right to self-defense. Nothing about those three shooting at him to make it justified. So that argument's not actually the argument. That being said, the reason people talk about other people shooting at Kyle, some people say that people shot at Kyle, but most people acknowledge that there were other people shooting, but not necessarily at Kyle. Enter Zeminski. This is Joshua Zeminski and his wife Kelly. They did fire the first shot, or specifically Joshua did fire the first shot that night. It wasn't Kyle who fired that first shot, it was Zeminski. This is on video, as well as the fact that they actually were charged, or at least Joshua was charged with this. State of Wisconsin versus Joshua Zeminski. Here's the details. And you can see this is from the criminal complaint. In another video, the defendant and Kelly are seen walking near a fire in the area of the Ultimate gas station lot. In later video, the defendant's right arm is seen on the video, which is taken near the 63rd Street and Sheridan Road in the city and county of Kenosha, state of Wisconsin. Detective Howard reports the defendant's arm pointing the gun upward towards the sky. Detective Howard observed a muzzle flash emit from the handgun and heard a gunshot at the same time. In another video, the defendant is clearly seen at that same location. The defendant is seen walking in the same area, holding his right arm upwards and firing off one shot from his handgun. The defendant and his wife are then seen leaving the area. Several other people are in the nearby vicinity when the defendant fires the handgun. Detective Howard was later able to arrange a meeting with the defendant and Kelly Zeminski on October 7th, 2020. In speaking to them, both admitted that the defendant had fired off a warning shot into the air during the night of August 25th, 2020. They further stated that the firearm in question had subsequently been stolen from the defendant's residence several days prior. So they admitted to firing that night. And as a matter of fact, you can see it, that muzzle flash that it talks about is right before Kyle shoots. Even Richard McGinnis, who was following by, admits that there was a gunshot that caused Kyle to stop and turn around. So Zeminski fired first. It wasn't Kyle. Now, he did fire into the air. Kyle didn't necessarily know that, which is why he stopped or turned around to see if he was being shot at. And that's when Rosenbaum called up to him and tried to take his gun. Here, you can hear other shots. You'll see Zeminski shot first, then Kyle fires 4 shots, and then some other shooter shoots 3 shots. There is drone footage. You can go look it up. There's drone footage that shows that third shooter on the other side of the cars from where Kyle is shooting.
Yeah, that's Antifa, man. Oh, we got a gun, baby. Oh, they shoot. Oh, he shot him. Get back. Shot him, man. He shot him. Shot him, man. He laid him out. He laid him out, you guys. He laid him out. Hey, boys.
Okay.
Yeah,
So there's Kyle running, Rosenbaum chasing him.
Keep him, man. Oh, we got a gun, baby.
That's Zeminski's shot.
Man.
And there you can see that's Zeminski. It says likely the first person to shoot. We confirmed by police
Oh, we got
that
a
is the
gun,
first
baby.
person. He raises his hand to the air, shoots. That's Zeminski shooting. Those are Kyle shots. That's the other shots from the third shooter. So you can see there were other shooters involved. Later on, when you see the second and third shooting, after Kyle starts walking away, hands off his gun towards the police, after he has shot the third person, you can hear gunshots going off then as well. So there were other people shooting, not necessarily at Kyle. Could have been at Kyle, but not necessarily at Kyle. But there were other people shooting. And the point of that isn't to say that that's what justified Kyle shooting, because whether anybody else shot or not, Kyle was justified because of the actions of Rosenbaum, Huber, and Gage. But it is important to note that other people are shooting because it sets up a context of the scenario and what's actually going on and how there's multiple shots, which can increase the fear and increase what's going on in the chaos. So just keep that in mind.
But legally speaking, his case is going to be exceptionally hard for his defense lawyers to work out in court, no matter how much money Republicans raise for him.
So he says it's going to be a hard self-defense case. Yet that's not what the experts say. There are tons of legal experts who have clearly said this is one of the most clear-cut cases of self-defense they've ever seen. It's not going to be a hard self-defense case. He claims it is because he's not actually looking at facts and details and basing his information off of that. He's biased. He's going by his political bias and his attack on Republicans, which is why he explicitly throws out the statement, no matter how much Republicans raise money for him. Although we've already shown that it's not just Republican. But he is so partisan and so full of hatred for Republicans that he can't look at the evidence clearly, unbiased, and build a decision based on what the facts say. That's why he doesn't think it's an easy self-defense case.
But that's not even the issue here. I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is the fact that we have this party, this Republican Party, who now views Rittenhouse as a folk hero, as a superhero.
I want you to notice the politics of this. He says he's not even concerned about the self-defense case, about Kyle making a self-defense case. He's not even really concerned about this. Again, this is showing his mindset. It isn't about the facts of the case. It isn't about what actually happened. It isn't about, the details or the importance of this case. Even if you thought Kyle was guilty, it's not about the case. He doesn't care about it. He's not concerned about that at all. He's concerned about the politics of it. He's concerned because Republicans are bad because they view Kyle as a superhero. Well, first of all, people don't generally view Kyle as a superhero. Even the people who call him a hero, they aren't calling him a superhero. They're calling him a hero in the sense of like a police officer's a hero. I disagree with that. I don't think Kyle is a hero like that at all. I think he was a victim who clearly acted in self-defense, but he is not a hero. But that being said, this is all about Republicans bad. It's all about politics. He don't care about the actual case or the facts or the details. He cares about how Republicans are bad. That's his entire point. This is all propaganda and just a way to attack his political opponent.
Thanks so much for watching. For more videos, click subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you enjoyed the video, click that like button. See you next time.